it fills a void in many ways. Just like I know you've gone really into extensive research on understanding this, the wiring, the neurology, and all the stages of how these habits become almost addictions and addictions themselves. How does it have such a strong grip? And it seems like you don't want to do it, but you keep doing it. What have you learned? Now looking back, how does this have such a strong grip, and why is it so hard to break the more you feed it? What have you learned? That even I think it's really important in this question because, like we brought up the term shame, and starting to feel like you're the only one. But I think it's really important to understand like how this stuff works, so that you can almost separate yourself a bit from it, to just realize like you've been played, and to realize that if you feed this stuff, it does intensify, and it does get a grasp, and it feels like it is something that's that's almost unhopeful to break out of. It seems like this grip can be like crushing. So what have you learned about like how this stuff is so gripping?
Yeah, and I think that's a two-part answer. I think we have to understand, and I work with men, and it's not that women don't struggle with this, but men are unique and different in their own way, and that's where I've dedicated my work is on coaching and helping men. I think we need to understand the wiring of the male brain. So there's a great book, Wired for Intimacy by William Struthers, and he talks about the differences in the male and female brain. So God created the male brain to be visually stimulated. That's why women are beautiful. Like, let's call it what it is. And beauty is something that is truly unique because, what's the saying, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So we all have our own kind of definition of beauty, but there's something truly transcendent about it because you can't really quantify it. So when you understand that the visual stimulation, the visual arousal of the male brain is part of what makes us men. So we have to understand that we are wired to be visually stimulated. Now, when we look at internet streaming pornography, and I think a lot of the work and a lot of what I try to talk about is the internet streaming pornography, not the Playboys of our generation, not, even going back, thousands of years, you can find, pornographic images, drawings in caves. I want to address it in answering your question from internet streaming pornography, this unlimited, unfiltered, hardcore, extreme graphic material that we have at our, basically at our fingertips 24 hours a day. Neuroscientifically, so in the neuroscience world, this internet streaming pornography is what's known as a supernormal stimulus. So we take the male visually stimulated brain and we provide it with a supernormal stimulus. Supernormal stimulus is something that you cannot get from the natural world. It's nothing outside of like hardcore drugs. So cocaine, heroin, these are the only two things or the only other things that are going to stimulate the brain in the same way that internet streaming pornography does. So what this means is from the first second exposure, you've now changed the baseline of your brain. You've changed how your brain is stimulated. So how does this lead to addiction? Well, our brain is set, with a reward center. We have dopamine, all these neurotransmitters, neuromodulators that are set to release at certain points throughout the day when we're in pursuit of things. If we hijack that with a supernormal stimulus, that means that we're not going to get those same senses or those same feeling. So this leads to the addictive traits where I got to seek out more porn. I got to go look at more hardcore material. I got to go into areas that I'm not even, morally okay with just to get that same level of stimulus. Just look at a drug addict, somebody that is struggling, with sticking a needle in their arm. They didn't start there. This is why, there's things, called gateway drugs, or an alcoholic, if he's drinking, a liter of whiskey every night, he didn't start there. He started with something, a little bit less. And then because his brain is wired to not respond in the same way, he's going to keep giving it more and more and more. So if we understand, the male brain is visually aroused, visually stimulated through beauty, but then we're going to overstimulate it with beauty, then yeah, it's gonna get hijacked.